The Ethiopian church took all of this literature, which included literature that nobody considered scripture at the time, and they appeared to have just been non-discretionary and included everything. A once forbidden page has been released by Ethiopian monks, even though they were ordered to destroy it, and it boldly mentions Jesus. What story does this page hold, and why was it silenced for so many years? The truth inside this rare find is making experts rethink everything they know about the start of Christianity. This is homegrown Christianity. Long before it was the religion of the Roman Empire, it was the religion here in Ethiopia. Ethiopia was the first Christian kingdom in the world. It is not even close to the version of history we were taught in school. Ethiopia was practicing this faith while others were still fighting over basic rules. Get ready to see the text that the world was never supposed to read or even know existed. A forgotten kingdom that knew the truth first. To start things off, we have to look at a place where time seems to stand still. Thousands of people gather around the Aksum Cathedral to worship just as they have for many centuries. But behind the heavy stone walls, a secret was being kept that was never meant to see the light of day. For a long time, there were orders to make sure certain texts were gone forever. The people in power wanted one version of history, and this page did not fit that story. But the monks in Ethiopia are famous for one thing, and that is keeping secrets safe from anyone who wants to destroy them. They believe these writings are more valuable than gold or even their own lives. When you look at the real facts, you see that Ethiopia became a Christian nation way before almost anyone else. In the 4th century, King Anna of Aksum made Christianity the official religion. This happened in the 320s and 330s. That is a huge deal because it puts Ethiopia at the very front of the history of faith. Most people look right past this part of the timeline, but it is the most important part of the story. Rome did not even make Christianity its official religion until the year 380. That means Ethiopia was more than 50 years ahead of the Roman Empire. While the leaders in Rome were still arguing about what to believe, and African kingdom was already living it every single day. This changes the whole idea that Rome was the starting point of Christian power. In reality, Ethiopia was a massive center of belief long before Europe had its famous Bibles. These are not just old books, but they are beautiful works of art that show a very smart and rich culture. This culture did not need help from Europe to understand the message of Jesus. They had their own teachers and their own artists long before the Middle Ages even started. Ethiopia was a powerful force that had its own money and strong trade connections with the rest of the world. They were not a weak group of people looking for approval. They were independent leaders who knew exactly what they were doing with their faith and their culture. This independence is the reason why they were able to grow in such a unique way. They used their own language and their own symbols to talk about God, and they kept their books safe when everyone else was losing theirs to wars or fires. While other places were seeing their libraries burned down, the monks in the mountains were copying these pages by hand over and over again. They were making sure that the voices from the past would never be silenced. This is why scholars are so shocked today. They are finding things in Ethiopia that they thought were gone forever. It is like finding a missing piece of a puzzle that has been lost for 2,000 years. Ethiopia is not just a side story in history, it is the heart of the story. The monks are still guarding things that could change our entire future. Let us switch gears for a second and look at why these books are so special. Ethiopia is the only place on earth that has the full versions of two very famous ancient books. These are the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. In every other part of the world, these books only exist in tiny pieces. If you go to any other country, you might find a few sentences in Greek or Hebrew, but you will never find the whole thing. To put it in simple words, if a scientist wants to read these books today, they have to go to Ethiopia. There is no other choice. For hundreds of years, people in the West were searching in caves and old libraries trying to find even a small scrap of these writings. They spent their whole lives trying to guess what the missing pages said. But all that time, the Ethiopian monks were just sitting there with the finished books in their hands. They were not treating them like old dusty items in a museum. They were reading them and praying with them as part of their daily life. This is the part that makes absolutely no sense to people who think history only happened in Europe. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, they had pieces of these same books inside that proved that these writings were very important to religious people a long time ago. They were not just weird stories. They were part of the main way people thought about faith. So why did the Western churches decide to throw them away? The part that nobody talks about is that it was all about control. Leaders in the West wanted a simple list of books that they could use to keep everyone following the same rules. They did not like books that talked about giant mysteries or strange visions of the stars. They wanted books that helped them stay in charge of the church. But Ethiopia had a different goal. They loved the books that talked about angels and the secrets of the universe. They did not care about what the leaders in Rome or Constantinople were saying. They were miles away in the mountains, and they made their own choices. These books changed how the people in Ethiopia saw the world. They saw the universe as a place full of wonder and spiritual power. This is not just about old paper. It is about how a whole culture kept a different way of thinking alive. They protected these books from wars and political fights that destroyed almost everything in Europe. While Western records were being changed or burned, the Ethiopian tradition says this is a record of what Jesus taught his followers during the 40 days after he came back to life but before he went to heaven. Most folk have no idea. That this book even exists. It is like a private spiritual classroom where the most important lessons were given to the people who were closest to Jesus. If you look a little closer, you find the real story is not about rules or laws. This book is all about how to change your heart and how to have a real connection with God. It does not spend time talking about how to run a church or who should be in charge. Instead, it talks about deep prayer and finding peace inside yourself. The number 40 is huge in history. Moses was on the mountain for 40 days. The people of Israel were in the desert for 40 years. So, having a book that covers those 40 days after the resurrection is a very big deal. For over 1,000 years, the monks in Ethiopia have been reading this and using it to train their new holy men. You might see people online saying this is a brand new discovery, but that is not true at all. These writings have been in the hands of the monks since ancient times. The only thing that is new is that people in the West are finally getting to read them in English. But even now, we do not have a perfect translation that explains everything. Mainstream scholars are still trying to catch up with what the Ethiopian church has known for a very long time. This shows us that faith grew in different ways depending on where you were. In the West, things were all about organization and power. But in Ethiopia, things were about the spirit and the heart. They never had to follow the orders of a king in Rome. They were always free to keep the books they loved. The teachings in this book are very practical, but also very deep. They tell you exactly how to stand and how to pray to feel the presence of angels. They explain how the world looks different once you understand that life does not end. The tone of the book is very gentle and full of healing. It does not try to scare people. It tries to show them a better way to live. For the monks in the mountains, this way of life was more important than anything else. They protected these instructions because they believed they came directly from the mouth of Jesus. And because they stayed so faithful, we can still read those words today. The gap between Rome and Africa is much wider than anyone thought. Fast forward a little bit and things look totally different when you compare Ethiopia to the rest of the world. The leaders there wanted to make sure that everyone across their huge empire believed the same thing. They needed to keep things organized so they could stay in power. This is why they had big meetings and made lists of which books were allowed and which were not. There is a common story that the Council of Nika in the year 325 picked the books of the Bible, but that is not actually true. That meeting was mostly about who Jesus was. The actual list of books in the West was not finished until much later. But while Rome was busy making rules, Ethiopia was busy making a home for the spirit. They did not care about building a giant organization. They wanted a direct connection to the sacred because they were never taken over by Rome or any European power. They could keep their own way of thinking. They kept books like Enoch and the Book of the Covenant because those books spoke to their hearts. To say it was a big choice is not even the half of it. It changed the entire history of their nation. Their list of holy books is much longer than the one used in the West. It includes many writings that Western leaders decided to leave out. This was not because the books were bad, but because they did not fit the Roman plan for a stable church. Ethiopia was not interested in playing politics with their faith. They wanted the books that talked about visions and the deep mysteries of God. This was a choice they made on purpose. It was not an accident. They knew that these books were important for the soul. Today, this matters more than ever. Many people are tired of the old way of doing things in the West. They are looking for something that feels more real and more personal. They are starting to look at the path that Ethiopia has been walking for 17 centuries. The gay manuscripts and the mountain libraries are not just old relics. They are like a map that shows us a different way to be spiritual. They show us that you do not need a giant system to find the truth. You just need the right words and a heart that is ready to listen. Ethiopia stayed faithful to this idea while everyone else was busy building empires. And now the rest of the world is finally starting to see the value in what they saved. Is it possible that we have been following the wrong version of history for almost 2,000 years? What would your life look like if you had these ancient secrets from the very beginning? Tell us what you think in the comments below. If you want to see more mysteries like this one, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing stories about the hidden side of our world.